to No Excuses. It is time for another book review. What in the world did I read last week? I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed about my reading this past week. I am. But irregardless, I'm going to share what I read with you. I read actually 3 books, and actually really only one of them is embarrassing. Yeah, it's really embarrassing. But don't worry, we're going to get there. I read 3 books. 2 of them were nonfiction, 1 of them was fiction, and in no particular order. The first book I read was The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. This has actually been on my radar to read for years. Years upon years upon years. And after I read The Appointment to Jerusalem, I was talking about that to someone, and they were like, have you ever read Corrie ten Boom, The Hiding Place? Because you would probably love it. Well, let's just move that book right on up to the top. So I went ahead and got the book and I read it. Amazing book. It is about a lady who is living, and she's about 40 or 50 when World War II breaks out. She has already lived through World War I. She's moving on. She's in World War II and it's breaking out. And things are getting rough. And the ten Booms actually have friends and actually an employee who's a Jew. And they start to see the hatred coming. And they struggle with it. The family was actually always known as a family that would reach out to their neighbors when they needed help and stand up and supply and help. And so when war broke out and the Jews were being persecuted, they came to the ten Boom house. And this family was like, not gonna turn away because it's not right. So they actually started to find places to hide these Jews. And eventually there came a couple Jews that they couldn't find homes for various reasons. And so they let them stay. And predictably what's gonna happen. So Corrie ten Boom ends up being arrested. And she ends up spending time in prison during the war. And for part of the time she was by herself, for part of the time she was with her sister. But it's amazing the power of their prayer, the power of their faith. Her sister had made some comments about the power of their prayer and about the power of their faith. At one point they were moved into a new barracks. And Corrie ten Boom was like, I don't know these fleas. And her sister's like, God says be thankful for all things. And Corrie's like, not the fleas. And they moved on. And as they were living in prison, in this particular barracks, they noticed that they had a lot more leeway because their wardens and their guards just didn't seem to care. And they weren't there in their face all the time. And they found out later that they didn't want to come into the barracks because it was flea-ridden. So God actually may use the fleas for something good. And the book just goes on and on and on like that. The book actually does also carry on after the war to talk about what Corrie ten Boom did after the war to carry on the same atmosphere and the same love of giving and supporting and nurturing. It was a really good book. It actually opens your eyes to, number one, what you can do and how often we turn our backs on what can be done to help other people. But it also talks about the power of faith and the power of our beliefs. If you haven't already read it, I would highly recommend it. If you did, let me know in the comments how long ago you read it, how late am I to this game, and let me know what you think. Book number 2. Still not the one I'm embarrassed about. I'm just dreading telling you. But book number 2 is by Jeffrey Deaver and Isabella Maldonado. And it's called Fatal Intrusion. And this is one of those cop shoot 'em up type books. And it's about a lady who's a federal agent and her sister is targeted in a crime. So this federal agent goes to meet her at the hospital and she's with her at the police station and she's just not sure the police are really gonna chase down this guy. And this federal agent thinks that this perpetrator has the telltale signs of being a repeat offender, a serial murderer. So off she goes. She starts to investigate it on her own. And there is murder and mayhem to continue. It just goes on, and you think that it's being wrapped up, and something happens, and he gets loose. And then you think it's going to be wrapped up, and oh my word, it's something else. So it's a really good book. The only issue I had with the book is there is a lot of cybercrime involved in it. And I don't know if what they were saying was true or if they were just making up this cyber stuff. I don't know. I'm maybe clueless, and maybe I don't know. But I don't know. And some of that cyber stuff left me in the dust because it was so foreign to me. It was still a really good read. It was really solid. It had me guessing. It had me on my toes, waiting to make sure everybody was safe. And, oh my word, don't kill that one. And, that kind of stuff. Good, solid book. So are you ready? It's time for book number 3. And I just need to put on my cloak of embarrassment because here it comes. I actually was skimming through Instagram and saw this book being advertised. It was a book called The Amazing Adventures of an Amish Stripper. Interesting, huh? Yeah, quite interesting. Yeah. Why not? Sure, I'll read it. Can't be that bad, can it? And the book starts out really good. It talks about this girl and how she's living in the Amish community, in a very strict one, the Schwarzentroopers. And she's living very, very strict community, and she is just not feeling it. She feels pressed in and constrained. She loves her family, but she just thinks there's more of a world out there. And it talks about how she starts to step out. The first thing is she stops wearing the underwear that her mom made her, and she buys fancy dancy thongs underneath her Amish outfit. She actually went to church with no underwear on a couple times. She went commando. And she's kind of stretching the boundaries a little bit, and she's going out and she's meeting guys, and she just knows that this is not her. And she talks about how it was just a really rough decision. This is all she's known. This is her family. This is her life. But she knew she couldn't stay. And in the midst of this, she's actually still expanding her horizons. She heard about these guys that were willing to take out girls, and so she called them. Now, these guys were strangers to her. And, I don't say all guys are like this, but you know what was on their mind, and she gave them what they wanted. And I was like, okay, she's just stretching her horizons. We got this. And she did eventually leave. And when she first left, she actually went with a guy who was using her for the same thing. And he was married, but his wife was really nice and was really trying to help guide her in the way of the English world. Things were going relatively well for her, but of course she met another guy. And she met another guy. And in the midst of this, she actually goes with a friend to a strip club, and the owner was like, man, dude, you gotta strip for me. And at first she says no, because that's just way too foreign for her. As if like having sex with every man that you see isn't foreign, but But anyway, so she starts to strip, and she finds out that it is freeing. Totally freeing, and she loves it. And at that point, I'm like, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I have no problem with that. You're good. Still not embarrassed about the book. I'm not embarrassed about the fact that this girl eventually does obtain a drug addiction. That's common. She went crazy. She left very, very strict. She went crazy. My problem and my embarrassment is the fact that this book is all sex. Not just, woohoo, I'm stripping off my clothes and that's sexual. No, straight up sex. Tell me who she didn't have sex with. I mean, I understand, and I've read enough about drug dealers that a lot of times women will prostitute themselves for their drugs. This gal was just pretty much anybody. And then she starts like selling herself for that. Every other line practically was she was having sex with somebody. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. There was more sex in this book than the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy. And, she couldn't keep a boyfriend because she always cheated on him. And then she's, working and selling herself. And there was a lot of sex. So pretty much the amazing adventures are She left the Amish. She became a stripper. She became a prostitute. She slept for free with a whole bunch of other guys, and she was a drug addict. Now, she did eventually meet somebody, and she alluded to the fact that she wasn't selling her body for sex. Whether or not she ever got off of drugs, debatable, because it really wasn't clear. Like I said, more sex than the Shades of Grey trilogy, which I'm also embarrassed to admit I read those. I gave this a 1, just because I didn't need to read, and I went with this guy, and this is what his package was like, and you know, and then I went with this guy, and I did 14 guys in that day because I needed money, and I did not need to read that. Although I read every word. Maybe I'm just a purist when it comes to reading, because I usually try to read every word. Anyway, I'm embarrassed about that one. Rated it a 1. The Fatal Attraction, I rated a 3, which is my average. It's a good, solid book. If it's solid, it's a 3. Corrie ten Boom, I actually am between a 4 and a 5. This one was pretty good. I'm going to say 4 because it has to like really knock my socks off to be a 5, but it was close. So those are the books. If you've read any of them, let me know. If you've read that Adventures of the Stripper thing, let me know. Am I the only one that thought that was like a little over the top? Either way, I enjoyed my reading for the week, and I'm moving on to the next week. No excuses.